are going to be making this pattern here. And even though it's backwards, it is called Angels. It's part of the Angels Among Us collection, and this one is called Big Sister. I love how this one has come out. I've made two of these so far, and so this will be my third one. This one is completely applique, so all of this is applique. And this is what I will be working on for today. I'm thinking right now that my background will be out of this fabric, and the background is this blue right here, so I'm going with purple. The gold highlights will be out of this yellow, and the face, I still want a brown girl, so I'm going to use this for the face, not the gold. And then I will use these scraps to make up the angel's dress. So that's my goal. In order to get started, it's not even about the fabric. What we're going to focus on today is the actual cutting out of the paper that is needed to make this applique design. And that paper that I'm using is called Heat and Bond. And so this is Heat and Bond Light, and it's nothing more than a big roll of glue. And the glue on this side is shiny, so this is the glue side here. Once we iron it onto the fabric, we'll peel the paper off and it'll be glue on the other side. So this will have glue on both sides of the fabric. On It has glue on both sides, I should say. One is just covered with paper right now, so it'll be on the one side of the fabric, not on both sides. And that will allow us to stick it to our paper. So where's the pattern? This is my pattern. And this is the front. This is top of it. And this is the bottom. So I just folded it in half because it's a little easier to work with. If I need it, which I doubt because these lines are so bold and black, I also have a light box. And so the light box helps me when I am underneath of the pattern to help it shine through so that when I'm copying it onto the heat and bond, I can really see it. If I don't need the light box, then, I'll just set it aside. But just know that you can use a light box. Typically, when the lines are not as dark, you really need one. All these have to be traced. So this is going to take a minute to do. When I trace all of these, I am going to use the numbers. And a suggestion that was given was also to draw arrows so that you know which direction to lay these in later. And also, in addition, which I've done already, like I have X's. So I told myself which pieces I've done already. So if I get started, I'm going to find a piece that I'm going to work with. And one thing about the heat and bond is that you can get it in a roll right off the bolt. And you do want to save as many pieces as you can. And there are some tips and tricks that you can do with it to maximize the amount of heat and bond used. One of the things is I would like my pieces to um, have a little bit of overlay. If you look at the picture, you can see that in between each one of those, there are gaps. And so that means that the purple in this case is going to shine through. And I want to make sure that that happens as well. So that's why this is as bold as they are, because you're going to draw on both sides of these. So for example, if I'm doing this one here, And I prefer to use a pencil because it doesn't smear. And this is just tracing. And you'll see that as I trace, I'm staying within the bold, that black bold line. It's not a perfectly straight, that's okay. When I cut it, I will make sure that those little jagged edges work the way they need to. But I'm gonna go all the way around. I prefer a pencil for this purpose because it doesn't smear like a pen or marker would. But if you prefer marker, whatever floats your boat, that's what you use. Okay. And I'm going to go all the way around. And this is why you need a lot of heat and bond. Because this is a big angel. And sometimes I start with the bigger pieces, especially if I don't have a lot of heat and bond. I buy this by the bulk because of how many applique things I'll do. So I always have enough for whatever project I'm working on. But if you're a little short, I would suggest doing the biggest pieces first. And as you can see, I get a little bored, so I do skip all around. I make sure everything is copied. This is C1. And you can put whatever other notes that you want to put on it as well. So I could call this the bottom. All right. So that way I know what piece this is. Okay. Now, if I wanted to, and it doesn't have to be perfect again, it had to be perfect while it was there, I can look for another piece. I can either skip around or I can stay within the same. It's not going to matter too much in terms of layout unless the colors that you have are right next to each other. But more than likely, we're going to be switching fabric. And it's not going to matter what is next to what. This is C2. That's pointing up. But I'm trying as best as I can to get in there. This is C3. Pointing up. And it would be nice if when I take this off of here, that I check all three pieces that I've already copied. And the good thing about this is if you use a pencil, if you mess up, it doesn't matter because you can erase it and use that piece again. If you cut it out, you have to use it for something else. Okay. And again, I can go over as many as I like if to my heart's content to get everything done. Okay. And if that light box works for you, the light box works for you. If you have lines or directional, this is what those lines are for. They're telling me what direction the stripes are going to go in, but I don't have any stripes. And this is just prepping today. So we're going to get all this done in terms of tracing. And then we will worry about ironing and getting this onto the fabric later. They call this stripes. Okay. And everything isn't lining up exactly the way that I wanted to because I did move that paper in the beginning. So some of the black is those black thick lines are going to run right in to one of my pieces. And again, that's fine because I'm going to have to lay this all out. Anyway, so it's not going to matter that it's not right on the heat and bond. That's why I don't have to do it this way. I can maneuver it any way that I want. I just want to make sure that I know what direction all the pieces are going in, what's the top, what's the bottom. And if there's any overlay, that's when I do want to shift it because I don't want to run short on the heat and bond. Okay, and again, I'm just telling myself which is the top, which is the bottom. And so you can see right now what this looks like on here. Okay, so I have a lot of space in here. So I can check, 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 check. Okay, so all these are done. I did this one here. I did this one here. And I did C4. Oh. Let me check for C4. So I still have this piece. This was longer than the piece that I was working on. I didn't do this one here. Okay. Use a regular pair of scissors. So it's easier to work with this rather than having the whole roll there. And again, I can turn this to get additional fits. Let me see if I can get this big slab on here. And I don't think that I'm going to make it. And if I don't, that's okay because I can get that on another piece. Okay, that one's not going to work for this piece. So I'm going to come over here and try some of the pieces in here. Oh, I have this one. Did I do C3? I did C3, and this one is C3. So I do have this big piece. And I am trying as much as I can just to keep the pieces together. So I'm going to look for them. Okay. And after C4, we're going to move this over. Did I get that one? I didn't get that one. So I'm just going to concentrate on these here. Okay. Again, I like a mechanical pencil. I love the fact that I can erase. I love the fact that it has always a sharp point. Okay, and all the way around. And sometimes I get a little silent because I have to concentrate. Let's see, one. Oops, I'm off of my mat. Let me get my arrow right. Arrow there. Let's see, three. And again, the C's represent which fabric I'll be using. So that's why I need to know, like, is it dark? Is it light? Is it patterned? Is it not patterned? Because this is in going together in a certain order. I do like the stripes. But I'm okay. Check, check. Prep. Check. Okay. We'll come up here. And I'll capture this one. Okay. And we'll come around here. And back up here. Okay. Good job, good job. Let's see, one. And again, I'm just telling, my arrows are telling me what direction I'm going in so that I know when I put this together later exactly what I'm doing. Because, yeah, I have a habit of not paying attention to what I'm doing. And sometimes it just makes sense for me to do it this way. Just want to check one thing for a second. Okay. Ha ha. There it is. Okay. So we have this one. We'll check that off. We have these two little ones. We have this one. And so, kind of like a puzzle piece, I'm coming in there and I'm trying to figure out like how to use my heat and bond the best I can. Now, there are other products out on the market, especially if you go to quilt shops, that you can purchase like a Wonder Under or Stitch Witchery, um, and they are a little bit more expensive. And that's why, I take my heat and bond very seriously when I'm doing this because I try as much as possible to use as much of it as I can because while this isn't expensive, I don't want to waste it. Okay. So as much as possible, I am trying to find those spaces that I can use to get my bigger pieces in, to get my smaller pieces in. Okay, go that way. And sometimes my hand isn't as straight as I would like it to be, which is fine. Because as long as I'm getting all the pieces I need, so I have this piece here that I didn't do as I'm finishing out. All this in here is going to be a little tricky. That's fine. Can I get that piece in here? Nope. Okay. Let me see if it'll go in here. I'm going to try this one more way. Because I will um, go around and around and around to see if it'll go. And if I didn't put that there, I could erase it, or I can just put it on another sheet. I'm gonna hold off on that. Let me get rid of this one, and I'm gonna need another piece because I do want to capture a lot in here, and I don't want to miss a piece. So I would rather cut a piece and then get all of that in there. And then I'll turn as needed for some of the other ones, but I do want everything, and that's just so I don't miss it. So it's not that, again, that it's going to stay in any particular order. All I really care about now is that I get as much of this as I can. I think, no, I didn't get C2. I didn't get C4 either. That's okay. So I'm going to come back to this one, but I'm going to take all of these. Now, hopefully I will not run out of pencil, because then I don't feel like running upstairs to get another pencil, and we may end up using a pen. So one good piece of advice is that if you have a piece like you're tracing like this, or if you're doing a lot of little pieces, my suggestion would be make sure that you either get that you have a lot of lead by you, or you make sure that you put new lead in the pencil before you get started, or have a bunch of sharpened pencils near you so that you don't have to sweat running out somewhere in the process of doing this. And yes, when I go to stitch all this down, this is going to be a bear. But I do love how it turns out. This was a request of about a month to get this done. So I have plenty of time to work on this. Hey, Sab, how are you? Okay. I think, yeah, check that one off so I don't have to do that one. This is part of C1. I'm going to check that one off. I still have C1 that I have to get. Is this C1? Oh. Okay, so I still have C1. We're going to come here. So we are just working on tracing the heat and bond for our quilt that we are working on. And I am the applique queen. I love applique. Applique is a great way to use up your scraps. It's a little bit of work, but it's a great way to use those scraps up. Okay, I checked that one off. And again, remember, this is not the layout when I do this. I'm just tracing all the pieces. So the pieces do not have to stay in order. It's just easier when we're tracing this to do this way. I'm fine, thank you. I am trying to do 2 different live streams today. My brother, the great computer guru, said to try the Riverside, so I am trying Riverside today. And we're going to see how it works. And let's see. That one's done. Did I do C2? No, I didn't do C2. And again, these are in no, like this, so this type of tracing, this is not in an order. So when I'm calling out C2 and C1 and C4, all this is representing is just the different colors of fabric or the patterns that I'll be using. So basically, this process, I'm talking to myself as I'm copying everything, or tracing, I should say. And I'm just telling myself, okay, girl, make sure, which one was that? That was C1. And again, my arrows are telling me which side is up, because I didn't do that the last time. The last two times that I made this, um, I only did that this time. So imagine what that looks like when I'm trying to put these pieces together. And it worked. Oh, it worked. But understand, I'm like, oh wow, this might be much easier. So this is going to be interesting using the arrows. So I do always mark everything for what it is, because that's just good common sense. The arrows was a great tip, but you're not going to remember what each of the pieces are, and you want to be able to lay them out on your fabric the way that they need to go, because if you don't, you may end up wasting um, fabric, and that's not what you want to do. So you're using, like I said, in some cases you might be using yardage, in some cases you may be using scraps. And if you're like me and you're using up your scraps, there's not much to go from. And more than likely, when if I mess up, once I get started, my problem is that I won't have the ability to be able to buy additional fabric, because they're scraps. So they've been in my stash bin possibly for what could be years. And fabric goes out of print, new designs are available, and you just don't want to run out if you can help it, because then it will change the way it looks. And if you're like me, you might not care about that too much. But other people might. This is for. So again, I'll just share the tip and trick with you, but that's not necessarily to say that you have to do it that way. Okay, and so this is a lot of tracing, and again, the lines are very thick, but I could use a light box if I wanted to. That would help me to see everything that I need to see. And technically, I don't have to put the C's because everything is a C. My question is, did I do C1? I thought I did this one. Oh, okay. And this is C4 here. And like I said, it all, sometimes it runs together. And that's why it's important to make the checks on it, so that you remember what you're doing. Okay. Ooh, I shifted because I'm real close. another one. And again, I prefer to use a pencil because a pencil doesn't smudge as much as a pen does. Okay, that didn't look like an arrow. That one looks more like an arrow. Okay. So you can see it's all there. I did not get this one, but I got this one. I got this one. I got this one. We got that. We checked that off. We got this. We have that one in there. We have this one in here. I got that one. Looks like I checked it off already. Okay. I got this. I got this one. Okay. So all of this is done here, with the exception of this. I still haven't done this one. And I need to get in here. Okay. So we'll get this one. Okay. C2. This is C3. Okay, that's C3. That's C2. There's a little piece in here. This is not going to fit there. Let's turn it this way. Okay. And again, it doesn't matter that they're out of order. You want them close. But remember, when you do the cuts, it's not going to matter anyway once you line everything up, because the colors are going to be, all these pieces are going to be with their colors, and the colors aren't necessarily one right next to the other. So the only real reason that I'm doing it this way is to make sure that I maximize the use of my heat and bond more than I care about the order. I still have this little one here. I'm not butting them right up against each other because I do want room to cut. And if I can help it, I want to cut a little bit outside the line, because when I cut the fabric, I'm going to cut on the line. This arrows are going that way, but this is going up. Okay. And then I need, and they're these little itty bitty 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 pieces, right? So here's another little itty bitty piece. Okay. We got that. So all of this is done here through this point. So you just have this up here, and you still have that one piece down there. You still have gaps in here, and we have gaps in here. But I am going to need a piece big enough for this and big enough for that. So if neither is going to work for that, I may need a bigger piece. And again, if you wanted to, you could do this with one long sheet. But I prefer not to do it with one long sheet, because I just think that it just kind of tricks me up. And so it's easier to do it in parts. This is a little wonky here. I do want to capture it. And if I wasn't being lazy, I would stand up. Okay, and again, we're just taking our time. And we're going all the way around. And some pieces are obvious, like it really doesn't matter if you draw an arrow because clearly we know which way is up. And if some pieces are a little lighter, that's fine as well because it's all going to work out. So these were the two biggest pieces that I still had to finish. Might as well just get it. Might butt it up against there a little bit. And it's just drawing. You're not 100% worried about your lines, and as long as you can trace, you're fine. Now your hand-eye coordination a little bit later, and we'll show you that process. It's going to make a big difference when you're laying this out, but for right now, oops, it's perfect. And of course you messed up again here, but that's what the erasers are for. And we're going to come around. Okay. And again, if as long as you can see it, right, it doesn't even matter that it's not 100% drawn around. You just want to make sure that you can see that shape. So even like sometimes, I'll give you like, for instance, for me, sometimes I'll run out of my lead in my mechanical pencil, and I will not want to go upstairs, and I don't want to use a pen because the ink smudges. So I will just kind of etch it and make it work that way because I find that, as long as I can see the lines, it's okay. So sometimes I'm not as worried that I don't have the actual line as I am the lead line as I am that I have some sort of line. So if it's an etched line, it works. And again, I'm just using that space to get everything that I need. And it's just like the memories are coming back from how I put this together years ago. And this is a concentrating thing. because you don't want to forget something. You want all those parts. Okay. Oh, one more here. And I think with the except, no, I got that one down bottom. Oh, got one more in here. And that's one of the reasons why I do like to do them side by side. So it's not because it just makes sense, right? But it's because if I forget something, I can look side by side and see that I forgot it. That little trumpet piece right there. Now, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just gonna make that trumpet piece. Well, it's not even really a trumpet, but that's a shape it reminds me of. I do save all of my extra heat and bond because if you saw those little spots that I had, if I didn't have them in this, I would have them in those little extra pieces I had. So as much of the heating bond as I can save, oh, absolutely. There's always a purpose for it. And like I said, some things are not cheap. I do have a scrap bin of them upstairs. So I do make sure that I keep them so that I have everything. And I think I have traced everything. I think. So great thing to have your pattern piece. This pattern did come whole like this. So this is the whole thing. Do I want to fold it back the same way I folded it? It's not going to matter. It's going to stick one way or the other. Okay. So we're going to fold this back up for our next use because you know I'll make it again. Okay. Now we're going to need it. So ask me why I folded it up completely. I don't know. Because we're going to need it. Okay. Time to pull out an ironing board and an iron. Okay. Now, some of this won't get done today, but just to show you a little bit of this process, knowing me, I will probably switch over. We'll see how I feel. Okay. So I cut this out as close as I can around without cutting on the lines because I do want some extra left over. I lay this on the wrong side of my fabric. I want that fabric to be nice and flat as I possibly can get it. And you don't need to iron. You just want to press, but you also want to make sure that you are paying attention to the press because you don't need to press it too much. If you press it too much, your glue is going to melt on through your fabric. And then it's not sticky anymore. Okay. This is a common piece that I use for a lot of my appliques and things. So this will go. And then this piece gets cut. Now, I'm using a lot of batiks. Batiks are great for applique because they don't fray quite as much as regular fabric does. And somebody was sharing with me that that's because they get dyed after they're woven together. And so they kind of stick together a little bit more. Okay. And so the face is done. And we set that aside. Now I can either keep the scrap or I can toss the scrap. I will toss the scrap. And when I mean by tosses, it goes into a pile with all of my other scraps to be used for something else. But I absolutely could just toss it. The next color that I absolutely know that I'm going to use is yellow. This is C3 on the pattern. Okay. So anything that is C3 is going to get this gorgeous yellow color. I need to open my yellow up and I'm going to press this. Now again, you can go back to the pattern and look to see where the yellow is. So these little small parts here, yellow, this is yellow, 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 or gold. But nothing's big. So I don't need a large piece for this because there's nothing really big in it. But I don't want to limit myself with what I'm doing just because if I do need a bigger piece, I don't want to cut it and then have to cut it again. But this is totally up to you. And so you can make the decision on the front end to cut, or you can make the decision on the back end to cut. But that's totally up to you. Depending on what you're using your fabric for, will determine, like if you wanted to go this way, and this is along the selvage, or if I wanted to go this way, along the cut. So that's up to you, depending on if you need possibly yardage for something else or not. So I can determine what little bit of square I do want to cut out and then how I want to run it. Okay. So I need all my C3s. And I know they're all little pieces. So I'm looking for all those little pieces for those C3s. If I cut out another piece, I want to place them somewhere, especially because of how small they are. I do want to place them somewhere where I can find them later because ask me how many times I've cut things out and didn't know where they were. So this is a small piece that I need to save. And this is one of my C3s. I see another C3 in here. And again, it depends on how you want to cut this up. If I can leave them as whole as I can, especially because of some of the small pieces, I will until I can't anymore. Okay. So I have C1, C2, 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 C2. Okay. So all these have C3 out of them. And it's more to the bottom. Okay, so I spy C3 here, C3, C3. That's that bottom. There's C3 here. And I am keeping mind of how many C3s I'm cutting. So I have now, with this one here, this is 4 C3s. And again, part of this is that you want to remember how many you cut out so you remember how many you're looking for. I am not cutting through the empty spaces because again, remember, I want to save as much of those empty spaces as I can for future projects because I do a lot of applique. If you don't do a lot of applique, you might not care to save all those spaces and everything might just end up in the trash for you. Or if you can't figure out how to use heat and bond for something else. So I will absolutely find several different uses for heat and bond. So yeah, I keep up with this stuff. Okay. So I am going to come around. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, there we go. And one right here. And again, I'm not laying anything out. So I'm not worried about cutting the small pieces first. Um, and again, your order, your your quilt, your applique, your order. So there are some people who would say, "Oh, I'm gonna cut the big pieces out first." Knock yourself out. So you can absolutely cut out those big pieces first. You can cut out those small pieces first. Now, one question is did I do two of the same thing? They look the same, but they're not. Okay. So I have a C3, 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 a lot of little C3s. But I think I may have cut out two of the same C3. And I'll just measure them. Nope, they're all different. Just to make sure. And again, because of the size of it, I just didn't want to have two of the same things and I couldn't use it again for something. If it's a circle, oh, I'm absolutely going to find a use for a circle. I could use that in a flower. So I have a lot of uses for circles. I don't have a lot of uses for these little shapes that we're cutting out for the angel. So there's no need for me to make extras of them if I don't have to. And if I cut out the heat and bond, not so much a problem. If I cut out the fabric, that's what I'm talking about. So the heat and bond itself, I could piece together and use it for something. The fabric, not so much. Okay. Oh, like I said, a lot of little C3s. There's another little one, and there's one here. So one, two, three. And if I didn't want to do a maze of cutting, I could have used an X-Acto knife and cut this out. I didn't have to use scissors. So totally, again, up to you which way you would like to go with cutting these out. Okay. One, two. Okay. I think I got all my C3s cut out. We'll throw those over to the side. Batik is different. There's really no front or back in most cases. You might look and say this side looks a little bit brighter than this side looks, but there's really no wrong way. I would just say stick with whatever side you are working on as being your right way. So if this is what I'm considering to be my right way, then I'm going to try to get all the pieces on this side. I could, as I am doing, and I don't have to put a lot of heat on this, right? So you see that, oh, I just want to cut off a little extra there. That, and if they overlap a little bit, but they overlap on the white part, not a problem. I don't have to apply a lot of heat. It's going to get heated again when I take it to my fabric. I just want the glue to lay down on this. And again, I determine, because these are small pieces, how I'm going to put this in here. And I just need a little bit of space to cut. But I remember I'm cutting on the line. So I'm trying not to go past the line, but I am going to cut on the line. And I have all these little pieces that I can get on here. And then a quick press. And look, if I can fit them in here and I can get them in, that's the smaller space that I need to use to get all this done. You don't need a lot of space. And again, this is why a lot of these projects for applique are great scrap busters. I can get as close as I possibly can together, and then I do not have to worry about going outside of just this little box. And I still have plenty left over for some mistakes that I might make with these little pieces. If I lose a couple of these little pieces, I will have enough gold left over to redo those little pieces. Okay, and again, this is not a heavy iron. This is enough just to hold those pieces in place. Okay, and I can cut this. And I don't have to cut these down right away. I can leave this like that. And then work on my next piece. So the great thing about this is that you can cut them all out at one time. You can cut them out individually. You can cut them out in their colors. And one of the reasons why this would work is because, again, remember, you have a lot of small pieces. And because you have a lot of small pieces, you don't want to lose those pieces. Okay, gonna look at that next color. So there is what they're considering a stripe piece. Let me face it so you can see it. So there are these stripes. I'm not going to have stripes. But I'm thinking I might be able to use this. Now, the difference between this and what I have is that this is all I have. Now, I do have a backup, but this is it. And I'm thinking that I may be able to use just this. So what I'm going to do is audition everything out on this first, and then I will see if it works. If it works, I am good to go. If it doesn't work, then I do have a backup. And if it really, really doesn't work, I can go to the fabric store tomorrow, which was on the plan anyway for this week that I'm off, and I can see if I have some additional fabric that may work that has stripes um, for batiks. Now, usually batiks are not stripy. Usually batiks are more feathery, animally, flowery. So I don't see a whole lot of stripes, but I'm going to try and see what I can find. So I'm ironing this as flat as I possibly can because again, it's important when you're working with this to iron it out. Okay, to get it nice and crisp as we can. I don't know why there's just this one little area that is not flattening out for me. There it is. Okay. Now, this is nice and flat because I'm the person I am. C4 is what I need. Let me throw these away because I'm not going to keep those little scraps. They're too small. Okay, and I need C4. And now this is where it's going to start to get a little tricky. And this is not, again, tricky because I'm saying it's difficult, but because I'm coming down to the last two numbers. And that means that the pieces are going to be cut up, right? So what I could do, and I got the smallest pieces. The smallest ones were the yellows. That's kind of sort of why I like to start with the smaller pieces as well, because it gives me the opportunity to know where they all are and then work with everything else. So this is C4, C1, and then I'm just throwing out the pieces, not throwing out, but I'm throwing to the side the pieces that could work for something else. So I'm laying my C4s aside. Ooh, there's a tiny C4. Okay, this is a C2, C1. I don't have to cut either of these right now, so I'll leave those two together. C1. This is a C4. This is a C4. Nice if I move my trash can a little closer. C1, C1, C2, C1, C1, C1. Okay. Okay. And again, we're just cutting all of these out. Okay. C4, C4, C4. Now, clearly, I know that some of my biggest pieces are C1, C2. I know this one big piece is not a C4. Yeah, this is C1. And again, I can kind of tell because the C4s all have lines that I wrote on. Except for this one. Huh. I don't know how that didn't happen. The lines don't even matter because I'm not using stripes. Okay. And I think I got them all off of this one. And again, I'm not even worried about what that looks like. Let's see, 4. I see most of the pieces are small. I'm probably going to start with my biggest piece first. C2 has a small piece. Yeah, watch me lose C2. C4 has one big piece, and that's the one that I want to start with. One of the things I will say about this, if you cut into the shape, and it's the heat and bond, the Wonder Under, the Witchery, whatever you use, the good thing about it is that once you iron it, that glue is still going to do what that glue is supposed to do. So don't even worry about like, oh man, I cut into it. You don't have to do it over again. Okay, this is going to be enough. So again, determine which side is your wrong side. In this case, it really doesn't matter. But if you feel some kind of way, you can look at both of them, make your decision, lay my fabric out, and then I will press. Now it is important to make sure your fabric lays straight because you don't want any bubbles and folds. And they'll come out on the other side if you get them, but you're not trying to, like here. And I can kind of lift that a little bit and straighten that out. It'll straighten out for me. Okay. Yeah, that straightened out a little bit more. Okay. And then everything else, again, I want my biggest pieces to go because I can work the smaller pieces around the bigger pieces. I do not need to spend a lot of time on the glue because you don't want it to melt all the way through so that it's no longer sticky. So get those big pieces out the way because if you don't and you run out of space, you won't be able to make it work. Again, if there's a little bit of overlap, as long as the lines don't overlap, it doesn't matter that the, now I do want to keep this, right, as in straight of a line as I possibly can go, only because why waste the fabric when I could use it for something else? Okay, we have that. And then we'll turn it this way. And again, I have like all this down bottom, so I'm still going to just go straight. Okay, cool. Again, if it overlaps just a little bit, I'm not that concerned, as long as the lines don't overlap. Mm-hmm. Cool. If I can keep it within all of this, this is where the scrap is going to be. And I can save all this for something else. I get this in here, let's trim off a little bit of this. And that's because I cut out a little extra around. I'm not going to use a piece that's small, even though I could. Okay. We have this little teeny tiny piece. And we'll put that right in here. Oh, this is a C4. Forgot about that one. We set that one aside. That will work right in here. And again, I can cut out, and this is going to be a scrap piece for something. I mean, I can get a block. I can get, this could be a strip. Um, so there are plenty of purposes that I can use this for. Again, I'm not going to do anything with this until this angel is completely cut out because I may need it. So this one's done. And this is what I have left. And we can save that for another project for a different day. Okay, so we either have C1 or we have C2. Okay, C2 is another small piece, and C1 is a bigger piece. So this will probably end up being C1. So then this piece will be C2, if it works. Now you can already see I've used it. So we're going to hope and pray, again, that we have enough pieces for C2. And if we don't, we have another piece as a backup. Now with this purple, the great thing about this is I can get another piece of this purple. So if I'm really married to this type of purple, it's okay, because I have enough faith in the boutique world that this purple can be replicated. Okay, so C2 is what I'm going for right now. I'm going to cut out those pieces, and I'm also going to set aside C1 because that's all I have left. So I have C2 and C1 going on either side of my space right now. Okay. And I'm going to cut off like all these little extra little pieces that I know won't get used for anything, and this can go trash. And again, totally up to you because you could use them for something, but I know I'm not. Me go with one is on this side. There's nothing in there. And usually I would have a bin that I would put all these in. My bin is upstairs, so I'm just collecting them on the other side of the table. But I would absolutely just throw those into a bin and then save them for future projects that call for smaller pieces. Something like this calls for a much bigger piece, and so I would use the rolls for the bigger pieces. But again, when it gets down, I might as well just cut them all out because it doesn't make sense to cut them out piece by piece by piece by piece at this point, you know, or numbered by number, I should say, because I am cutting them out piece by piece. Just because you're going to turn around and have to do that anyway. This is a scrap. This is the actual piece. And so I'm just cutting everything out, C1, C2. And because at the end of the day, if I have to stop, right, I'll either cut out all of C1, or I'll fuse, I should say, all of C1. And then I'll come back and do C2 if I don't have enough of what I need. Okay. Those are extra pieces. They go over there. Okay. I'm gonna cut out this little extra piece. A whole lot of C1s. That's a good piece. And, you know, it's at this moment that you might realize that you didn't cut a C2, a C3, or C4, and you go back and you do it. So that's another reason why I like to leave everything whole, because if there's an opportunity to fit it in, I want to be able to do that before I start cutting rather than after. This is C2. Now, if you felt like doing the whole Jenga thing your way, you could have traced this and traced it with, okay, you didn't label a piece. Who does that? And watch, this piece is one of the pieces that I just got finished. Okay. Look at a piece right here that's not labeled. Over there. Okay, we have one more. Now this was the big daddy piece. I don't think there's anything else. Nothing on that. Like this is the one that gets its first turn onto the thing, onto the fabric, because this is a big piece. Okay. Take that, move that over there. And this is the C1. Now, if I was paying attention, I should have all my C2s together and all my C, but I had a big piece of C2 and I don't see it, which means that I probably mixed that C2 up in that C3. And C1. And again, that's why it's important to pay attention to what you're doing. Because if you accidentally either don't have enough, right? Like if I didn't have enough purple and I didn't recognize the fact that I messed up, then what happens is I think I have enough purple, and then I cut everything out only to realize I don't, and I may have needed like that purple. And in this case, it may not work that way, just because I could probably find something close to this, but that's not always the case. So you really do want to make sure that before you fuse anything down, that you have all the pieces that you need before you fuse it. Because if you fuse it and then you're like stuck with these pieces. You're cutting out an extra set again, which is going to be a pain in the neck and a waste of your fabric. Much like this one that I have that I didn't bother to write down what it was. Okay, I remember. I think I remember. I don't see it. So these are all the pieces, and these are not all my C2s. Did I throw it? I didn't throw it away. It didn't fall on the floor. Now, the good thing is that you can open up your pattern and see what you're missing, but I'm trying not to open up the pattern to see what I'm missing. So, which is another good reason to not throw your scraps away, because then you can go back through those scraps, look to see what, you jammed yourself up on, and I do not see it on any of my scraps. Okay. Now, I didn't see it in any of my C1s, but I could have sworn that I had a bigger piece. Okay. Maybe that was C4. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I want to check this piece anyway. So I'm carefully going to lay this down. That was a C4 that I'm thinking of. This is a C2. Okay, good. So this was C2. And I do not see another big C2. Okay. So I must have been delirious, which is perfect. Okay. But I'm going to save a big spot just in case I'm delusional. Okay. Again, I'm laying out my biggest pieces. Then I'm going to press. I don't need a lot of press, just enough to hold them in space. And then to put my other pieces down. Again, my biggest pieces. If I overlap a little bit, no problem, as long as the lines don't overlap. Okay. And then we'll put our other pieces in there, like a little puzzle, wherever they fit. Okay. And again, I just want as much of the fabric as I can save for a future project, because we don't waste fabric. Okay. will come across here. I don't even feel like saving that little dip. So we have this piece. Okay. We'll set that aside. And we'll fold this up. We'll save that for scrap. Okay. And then here's our last piece. I called for a half yard, but you have to see anything that needed to be a half yard. I like. Okay. Now this is going to call for more fabric because some of those pieces were really big. And so the good thing about it is that using scraps allows for you, like if you have pieces left over from projects, it's allowing for me to lay this out any way that I want. Okay. Okay. Just had to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. Okay. So we can take that first big piece. And this is like between this and the top. These are like the two biggest pieces. I want to lay this out as flat as I can because this has a really weird, awkward shape. And I want to make sure that before I press it, that it's laying flat and it's not going to go over. Okay? I'm going to start in the center and just work my way out. Then I'll come back over this way. And I'm just trying as much as possible to ensure that that's going to be flat. Okay, and then we'll come this way. And I'm just allowing that fabric, I'm allowing the heat and bind to move to where it wants to move to make it flat. Okay. So this is the biggest piece and this is done. Now I have some other big pieces. This is the top. If my fabric were directional, this would matter. It's not, so it doesn't. Let me iron that little piece right here that I didn't iron before. We can get that right in there. And again, you start with your bigger pieces. And see, this is why, and again, I'm not going to need a half yard, but this is why we have to start with those big pieces first. Because the big pieces are going to take up a good portion of what we're doing. Okay? And we can leave spaces for the smallest pieces in between these bigger pieces. Okay? And I might have more waste with these than I did with some of the other ones, but that's okay. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on these because you see I'm going over this over and over and over again. And I don't want the glue to melt to the point where it no longer is going to be sticky when I need to fuse it to my fabric. Okay, that piece isn't going to work. This little piece can go in here. Okay. And I'm just playing with my pieces to get them to go into the spaces. Oh. Okay. This was another big piece. Now it would be nice. Okay. I'm gonna tell you that I actually thought about, like this was on purpose, and we know it wasn't. Okay. Okay. Cool. 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 Yay. We have two pieces here. Let's go separate them because I may be able to get them in somewhere. So I'm having a lot of scrap, right? Which is fine. Mhm. Okay. Now, let's see if this will work. I doubt it. Nope. So she tried it. Um, she tried it again. And I do, like, I have a space for it, right? I was just trying it. Right, I can get that right in there. Okay. Trash. Okay. Check underneath my space to make sure that I don't have any more pieces. And then I can cut. And again, depending on what I'm going to use this for, I can just cut around this loosely because the little pieces are going to go into the scrap. I have enough of this that I may be able to do something with this. And I'm still going to save it for right now in case I mess something up. Okay. Okay. So we have this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece, and somewhere on this table is this piece. So these are all the pieces. So the next thing to do is to cut these out, and then after these are cut out, I would then begin to assemble them. I will show you the next step in another video, so we will stop here just because it's been about a half an hour. So far, this is what we have for all of our pieces for this quilt here, which is this is another by Anita design called Angels Among Us. That's the collection, and this is Big Sister. So this is what we're working on, and we just now need to put the pieces together. Okay, so stay tuned and have a good one. Thank you.